Welcome, everyone. Thank you for standing by. At this time, all participant lines are in listen-only mode. I would also like to remind everyone that the call is being recorded. If you have any objections, you may disconnect at this time. Now I'll turn the call over to our host for today, Ms. Shondell Dawson. Ms. Dawson, you may begin.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Shondell Dawson. I'm the Senior Program Specialist for the Family Violence Prevention and Services Program, and we're very pleased to welcome you to Invito, a campaign and toolkit to engage Latino men to end violence against women. This is a 90-minute webinar. We have some wonderful speakers who will be talking to you about this incredible campaign and their work on this issue. But before we start that conversation, I'd like to pass the floor to Sarah Fleming with Casa, Esperanza, who is going to give you a little bit of a technology overview about the platform that we're using for today's webinar. Sarah?
Hi, this is Sarah Fleming. I'm the Administrative and Logistics Specialist over at Casa de Esperanza. And so we're using the iLink platform today. You should be able to choose to hear the webinar audio over the computer. If you're having trouble hearing, you can also call in, and the number is 1-888-456-0351, passcode 6199133 if you're having trouble hearing. If you have any technological issues during the webinar, you should message in the chat window at the bottom left-hand side of the screen. And throughout the presentation, if you have any questions about the content of the presentation, you can also message there, and we will have a question and answer session in which we will take questions from that section. So thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. And please remember that everything that you all type into the chat is open to the entire public and will be a part of the webinar recording. So please do not share any confidential information there. So now that we have gone over the technology, I do want to officially welcome you all on behalf of my program, the Family Violence Prevention and Services Program. We are located within the Family and Youth Services Bureau that's a part of the Administration for Children and Families. On behalf of my colleagues at the FIPSA program, my director, Mary Louise Kelly, and my FISB colleagues, we want to thank you for making time to join us today. I'm also pleased to be joined by my colleagues from the Office of Women's Health, Dr. Nancy Lee, and the Maternal and Child Health Bureau, which is in HRSA, Lamar Henderson. We truly appreciate the opportunity to co-host and partner together to support this important webinar that's mirroring sort of a national partnership that we hope is replicated on the ground within local communities when it comes to addressing domestic violence and also working with culturally specific communities to raise awareness about the impacts of violence, trauma, and abuse. For the FIPSA program, we know that domestic violence impacts many individuals across all walks of life, and we know that survivors of domestic violence come into contact with many programs funded by the Health and Human Services, and then, as well as our colleagues at other federal agencies that are working on community health centers, home visitation programs, child welfare programs, through the court system, in addition to the network of domestic violence shelters that we support. We do support a national network of services across the country, including the National Domestic Violence Hotline, resource centers, culturally specific institutes, and some community-based programs focused on domestic violence. And we're in a unique position to hear often about the challenges related to intervention on supporting individuals impacted by domestic violence, as well as thinking about prevention. And so we've been proudly committed for the last 30 years to increasing training and technical assistance and ensuring that resources are available for our grantees around not only thinking about language access planning and culturally relevant programming, but what it means to be trauma-informed and how to think about the experiences of oppression and trauma and what that means for those who are accessing our services. Casa de Esperanza, the Asian and Pacific Islander Institute on Domestic Violence, and the Institute on Domestic Violence in the African American Community are all culture-specific special interest resource centers that have been supported by the Family Violence Prevention and Services Program for years. And we turn to these organizations to help lead our national efforts on understanding how culture-specific communities and individuals from diverse and marginalized communities are impacted by domestic violence. What are the important considerations for outreach? What are the considerations for increasing partnership? And how can we be supportive on looking at this nexus of violence, oppression, and abuse and allocating resources and programming accordingly? These institutes lead national efforts not only on community engagement, but research, documenting survivor challenges, delivering trainings, offering in-depth consultation, developing toolkits, as well as serving as advisors for our grantees and our partners on how to engage with the Latino community, the Asian Pacific Islander community, Africans and African Americans around the issues of domestic violence. And we're very proud of the work that they've been leading for us, and we're equally pleased to be able to talk to you today about the work of Casa de Esperanza and the National Latino Network in discussing their prevention campaign and the toolkit. Invito is very impressive, and we hope that you will join us nationally in spreading the word about this toolkit, connecting others to these tools and resources, and helping us lead and join in national efforts to have very positive conversations on a community level about how all members of our community, including men, women, and young people, can partner together to address this very pervasive issue. So I want to thank you again very much for making time to join us today. We hope that you are equally as impressed as we are about the Invito Toolkit, and will find this webinar to be very informative today. I will now like to pass the floor to Dr. Nancy Lee from the Office of Women's Health.
Good afternoon, and thanks so much for the opportunity to be here. I'm Nancy Lee, the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Women's Health and Director of the Office of Women's Health at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services in the Office of the Secretary. My office is pleased to be co-sponsoring today's webinar, as we have a rich history of targeting much of our efforts in traditionally underserved communities, as well as in the whole topic of interpersonal violence. In recent years, our office has sponsored health and wellness initiatives at 8 minority-serving institutions, including the University of Turabo in Gurabo, Puerto Rico, and the University of Texas at El Paso. 2 overarching priorities of this initiative were to cultivate a campus environment intolerant of interpersonal violence and to develop or adapt campus health and safety policies and procedures. Each year of this program, each campus conducted campus-wide events to promote awareness about ending interpersonal violence, developed or updated campus policies on interpersonal violence and included them in the student handbook and student orientation materials, provided training on men's engagement in ending violence against women, and encouraged male student groups to provide guidance to other men on supporting survivors of interpersonal violence. We also have ongoing a big project that we call Project Connect. It's a coordinated public health initiative to prevent violence against women. Funded through the Violence Against Women Reauthorization Act of 2005, Project Connect trains healthcare providers to use specific interventions to assess for and respond to domestic and sexual violence in the clinical setting, and to connect with social service providers who can further assist women who have been victims. In partnership with Futures Without Violence, this work is done in states and health sites as well as in tribal communities. Project Connect grantees provide innovative, effective, and culturally relevant services to traditionally underserved communities, including LGBT youth, rural women living in poverty, and Latinos. Finally, you may be aware that on April 29th, the White House Task Force to Protect Students from Sexual Assault released a 90-day report with policy recommendation and best practices for schools in for schools, both high school and university, in 4 critical areas, one of which was preventing sexual assault and engaging men in that process. Since then, our office has partnered with the White House and Generation Progress in launching It's on Us, a campaign aimed at fundamentally shifting the way we all think about sexual assault. It's on Us is a declaration that sexual assault is an issue in which we all have a role to play. We are reframing sexual assault in a way that inspires everyone to see it as their responsibility to do something big or small, to prevent it. Together, we can create an environment where sexual assault is unacceptable. And as you can totally understand, bringing men into this whole effort is fundamental to the process of cultural change. Like you, the HHS Office on Women's Health is committed to programs like these because they are making a difference. We are continuing to confront violence as a major public health issue and are here to partner with you in mitigating the long-term health effects of violence across the lifespan and in stopping the cycle of violence in years to come. Thank you very much, and we look forward to the rest of the webinar.
Thank you, Dr. Lee. I'd now like to pass the floor to Lamar Henderson, who will offer remarks on behalf of the HRSA Office of Women's Health as well as the Maternal and Child Health Bureau. Lamar?
Thank you, Ms. Dawson, and thank you, Dr. Lee. It was as a clinician who works with domestic violence victims as well as sexual abuse, I'm really, really passionate about men becoming involved in violence prevention, and I thank you all for letting us have this opportunity. We'd also like to thank our partners across the other HRSA bureaus as well as offices, and definitely the Department of the Administration for Children and Families and the HHS Office of Women's Health and Casa de Esperanza for the opportunity to collaborate on today's webinar. HRSA is the primary federal agency for improving access to health care services to people who are uninsured, isolated, or medically vulnerable. HRSA's mission is to improve health and achieve health equity through access to quality services, a skilled health workforce, and innovative programs. HRSA and its grantees have a goal to provide health care to uninsured people living with HIV/AIDS, pregnant women, mothers, and children. In addition, grantees train health professionals to improve health systems to care for individuals in urban, suburban, as well as rural communities, and this includes tribal communities. HRSA's Office of Women's Health is the primary lead for violence prevention in the agency. In 2011, the Violence Prevention Work Group, a subgroup of HRSA's Women's Health Coordinating Committee, was re-engaged, and our current priorities include coordinating collaborative activities and events during violence prevention-related health observances. Some specific activities have included webinars such as this one to raise awareness about domestic violence and the importance of the male role in reducing and preventing trauma, any type of trauma to any individual. And we've also trained several HRSA staff as well as some external partners. HRSA supported Women's Preventative Service Guidelines, which a link I will post in the chat box for everyone to access after the webinar, because we want you to make sure that you pay attention to Juan Carlos. But under the Affordable Care Act, including screening and brief counseling for domestic violence and interpersonal violence as a covered benefit with no additional cost sharing. Additional screening and counseling for HIV and AIDS and other sexually transmitted infections are covered benefits for both men and women. The next open enrollment, we would like to remind you, is November 15th, and it closes on February 15th, 2015. The last point I'd like to make is Care Counts Education Women and Families Challenge. To help make women more aware of the importance of benefits available to them and their families through the Affordable Care Act, the Health Resources and Services Administration, in collaboration with the HHS Office of Women's Health and the Coordinating Committee on Women's Health, announced 4 winners, 2 first and 2 second place entries in English and Spanish respectively of the Care Counts. And that's another link that I'll post in the chat box later on. Educating women and families, addressing the challenge for educating women and families. This challenge called for the creation of innovative tools, educational tools that inform women about enrollment in the marketplace, as well as key provisions for the Affordable Care Act designed to specifically improve the health health and wellness of women, children, and their families. For more information, please, if you have time, go to carecounts.challengepost.com. There you'll be able to see the tools as well as the announced winners. And as I said, at the end of the presentation, I will definitely post that link into the chat box so that everyone will have the ability to click on it. And at this time, I'll turn it back over to Ms. Dawson. Thank you.
Thank you, Lamar. I am pleased to introduce our speaker, Juan Carlos Arion. He is the Executive Director of Casa de Esperanza's National Latino Network for Healthy Families and Communities. Juan Carlos has been an invaluable partner to the FIPSA program, as well as to our grantees for many years. He's a highly respected leader, and he has worked for 20 years to engage men across different cultures to become better fathers, intimate partners, and allies to end domestic violence and to achieve gender equity. Prior to being at Casa de Esperanza, Juan Carlos also had a leadership role with Futures Without Violence, where he developed curricula and articles, training tools, and presented nationally and to international audiences. He's originally from Mexico City, and he immigrated here to the United States as a young adult and brings a true passion not only for his work, but a true understanding for engaging the Latino community and providing leadership and voice for the impact of domestic violence, sexual violence, and stalking. So I'd now like to pass the floor to Juan Carlos. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shondell, for such kind words before and now. I, first of all, want to thank you, Shondell, and Mary Louise Kelly, and everybody at the FIPSA office for really the amazing partnership that you have created. It's, for me, an incredible example of how government and non-government organizations, nonprofits, can work together in true partnership and develop very creative kind of programs like this one is. We could not have done it without the FIPSA support. So we are so grateful for your support on this and many, many other programs. And I also want to thank the other sponsors for the webinar and creating a wider audience for us, certainly Dr. Lee and everybody at the Office of Women's Health, and Mr. Henderson and HRSA and the Maternal and Child Health Bureau. Thank you so much. And Lamar, feel free to post while I speak. I think most people nowadays are used to doing a little multitasking. So one of the things that for me is exciting, as Shondell said, I have been in the field now for 23 years, and maybe I know more for being old than for what I have studied. I've seen a lot of what works and a lot of what doesn't work. But one of the most exciting things, and you could see it from the words, the introductions to the webinar, is that engaging men, the topic of engaging men, has become central to the movement to end violence against women. As you might know, it wasn't not central necessarily before. It has always been there, I have to say. This is something that we have to always remember, that men have been present and supporting our sisters from way back. One of the anecdotes that I want to tell about this, that I like to tell, is that when I visited the Seneca Falls in upstate New York, where the first big conference of the suffragists, to demand the vote for women at the beginning of the 20th century, 1/3 of the people that went to that Congress were men. So even we might think, well, it takes a lot to involve men. They have been disinterested and so on. But the truth is that there have been some men, obviously not all men, some men that have always been right there supporting women's rights to vote, and also to live full lives free of violence. So for me, it's exciting to be at a point in which more and more people are recognizing and joining and have interest in this particular topic. And this particular project and webinar is an exciting opportunity as Latino men to look specifically at issues of primary prevention when working with Latino men. Before I go on, I do want to mention that just recently a wonderful young man, Robert DeLeon, has joined the team of Casa Esperanza as a consultant, but taking the lead on putting this initiative, Invito, out in the world. Robert, are you in the line? I know that Robert was having some trouble signing.
Carlos, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes, I can hear you. Wonderful. I'm glad you're here. Would you like to say a couple of words about yourself?
Absolutely. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Robert DeLeon. I'm currently in McAllen, Texas. That is in South Texas. And, I had the great pleasure of meeting Juan Carlos a couple of years ago when I was leading some of the community health workers and or promotoras here in South Texas around engaging men and boys to help end and prevent violence against all women in our communities. And, I'm excited to be a part of the Casa team, the Casa Esperanza that is, and, I'm looking forward to helping each and every one of you and your organizations implement and use the Invito Toolkit. So thanks for being here.
Robert will tell you more about how to do this, because the Invito is a toolkit and a campaign that can be localized in any community, and Robert will be the person that will be helping people localize that. So before we go more into the Invito, I just want to talk a little bit about Casa de Esperanza. Sometimes there is some confusion about what Casa de Esperanza is and what the National Latino Network for Healthy Families and Communities, which I direct, is. Simply put, Casa de Esperanza is the mother organization. It has been in existence for more than 30 years, and it's based, it's in St. Paul, Minnesota, and for 20-something of those years, and now up to now, Casa de Esperanza has offered local support for women and children and men in the community of the Twin Cities. About 10 years ago, the particular approach that Casa de Esperanza had started to be noticed by other communities around the U.S. and actually in Latin America too, and people started to ask for more and more training and technical assistance, and that's when the National Latino Network was born. So we are the national arm of Casa de Esperanza. Casa de Esperanza is our mothership. And as you can see from that slide, the mission of our organization is to mobilize Latino and Latina communities to end domestic violence. If some of you are wondering why in some places we're using the @ this symbol, like in Latina, it's because in Spanish is a very gendered language, and we still are at a point where we use the masculine to encompass both masculine and feminine, as you know from many years in the U.S. wanting to change that. We are also trying to change that in Spanish. So since we don't have a neutral kind of word, some people, including ourselves, are using that @ because it has both the A and the O, which is the feminine and the masculine, and it's more inclusive. The only problem we have at this point is that we don't have a consensus on how to pronounce it, so we still say Latino and Latina. At Casa de Esperanza, this is absolutely central to the way that we see this issue. We know that we are not going to solve the problem of domestic violence, sexual assault, stalking, any kind of those problems ourselves, but it will be the community that will finally solve it. And we see our role as a catalyst, as a supporter, as an ally to make that change happen. But we don't see ourselves as the actual agents of change. And we think that what will create that change at the center is social capital. And that is many things for many people, but for us it means trust, reciprocity, information, and cooperation among community, between communities, and so on. And there is research to show that that kind of social capital helps solve or start solving some social problems. Going to the national part of things, the National Latino and Latina Network, as Shandol mentioned, we are one of the FIPTA-funded cultural-specific national resource centers. There's others, of course, with different populations. And as our sister centers, we do training and technical assistance, both virtually, like now, but also in person. Last year we did 92 in-person trainings and workshops and so on. We do public policy education, too. We have a research center, actually, which is based in Georgia State University in Atlanta. We have communications. We have a website that we, of course, invite you to visit, nationallatinonetwork.org. They didn't take the at symbol there, so it's Latino with an O. Maybe Sarah can start helping me posting some of those of that information in the bulletin board, and we'll also give you the Invito, invito.org, which is where the there you go. Thank you. And of course we have many products. This is only one of the products that we have. We have many others, and we organize events like in that photograph, our biannual National Latino Institute, which brings Latino advocates from all over the U.S. and Latin America. And more, we are getting asked to, we don't have full capacity, but to bring some of what we have learned here to our Latin American sisters and brothers. Our communications manager told me as soon as you can put out a toolkit, a slide with social media, especially Twitter, because now people can tweet. I don't tweet yet, and I've been told that I should. But if you do, we invite you to use the handles at Casa, Esperanza, and at NLN Invito, and the hashtag Invito Ya, which means right now, to share with that. So when I do this training in person, I usually start by asking the audience why it is important to engage men and boys, because I assume that if the audience are coming to a workshop like this, they already have some ideas of why. So when I'm doing a webinar, I ask people to write in the chat box. And by the way, and then I'm forgetting if Sarah said that, but I think, yes, Sarah mentioned something, but I will remind you, if you have any questions at any point, just write them in the chat box. We will take your questions through the chat box. We will not open the line. So at the beginning of this webinar, I asked, actually, this question, why engage men and boys? And we got some really good answers. LaWanna Johnson said for prevention and education. And one thing that I want to specify is that this initiative and this toolkit is about primary prevention. So it is about engaging men, Latino men, who are not violent. I mean, they might have, we all are in a spectrum of patterns of, sexism, patriarchy, and so on, but that are not actively, men who batter, if you will. That's important to specify. Other people, Maya Angelou, said they should be able to help their families and communities. They may not know what to do in a moment of crisis. Great comment. I mean, we, as men, are not taught of what to do when we witness violence or when a loved one is a victim of violence. Ramona Mida says awareness about what is happening out there. Awareness absolutely essential, right? And of course, we are in the middle of an interesting time in which, because of what has been happening at the NFL and so on, there has been a lot of talk and a lot of awareness, and more men stepping out and saying, yes, this is unacceptable. Noemi Kerr says men could be powerful allies. So you folks are in some way ahead of some of the things that I will share in the presentation. All of these are very important roles that men can play. They need there needs to be a societal change, and of course, to have a societal change, we need to include men. Jessica Moreno says, because as fathers and friends to others, they can influence a community that values respect and healthy communication in relationships with others. Absolutely right, Jessica. But still, we live in a society where men have quite a bit of influence, right? Whether we like it or not. So why not use that influence for a good cause? Candace Jett says, it is imperative that all men with capital acknowledge that violence against women is simply unacceptable. I do agree very much with that. And Naomi says, again, our cultural norms support violence against women. The more men speak against that, the more we have a chance of how women are valued and viewed. Women have a history of oppression that fits into our current reality. Thank you. And then Robert tells us, let's see, you said a lot of men already, if you ask me, a lot of men already want to be part of this movement. I agree with you, Robert. And sometimes there's a feeling like, well, we don't know what to do. We don't know. Nobody has access. They just don't know how to. And Ilya Vasquez and also there says to liberate themselves. That's a very interesting thing. I like that language in some way because I one of the things that many of us are aware is that, of course, even if it's men's violence against women, stopping that will also make us wholer as men. Violence against women, all violence affects men too, of course, and everybody's life will improve. That is the truth. If we stop all kinds of violence, not only violence against women, but all kinds of violence. Well, thank you very much for those comments. Very tough. Appreciate it. So I want to give you a little bit of background of how we work at Casa de Esperanza and how for us it's very important to be always connected to the community when we do an initiative like this. So when we have an idea or when we have a proposal with our partners in government, well, what about creating a tool, a toolkit, a campaign to work with men? The first thing that we do is go to the field and ask community members, so what do you think about this idea? And we ask both women and men. And we ask them in different parts of the country where we have access. In this case, St. Paul, where we're based, but also in Atlanta, Georgia. So before embarking in what we think is our ideas of how to do this, and we do this in every single program, we go to the community and ask them through listening sessions. So what do you think about this? Why is it important? The same questions that I'm asking you right now, we ask them. And what messages are appealing and so on. So out of those listening sessions, there were men and women segregated sessions. Some of what the men said is they recognize that this is a social problem, which is very important to recognize, and that this is not only an individual problem, but it is a societal problem, like someone mentioned in the chat. The issue of machismo came up, which is natural because we connect Latino men with this word, which, it means, most of you probably know that macho actually means male, but this word has been connected with male supremacy, basically, right? I'm always careful using this word outside the context of Latino men, and I know that it has been adopted in some way as a description of male supremacy in general, but the point for me is, of course, that machismo or male supremacy manifests in every culture in different ways. So I just want to be careful that neither Latino men nor others from other communities have this misconception that Latino men are particularly, identified with this kind of ideology. They also mentioned the importance of education. So someone, again, on the board there said prevention and education. They recognize that too, the importance of bringing that message in school, but also among friends and among family. And then a little what Robert was typing there before, that the men said, we want to do something, but we don't know what to do. They felt it as lack of support, not only to do something, but this is what was very interesting, and I think this came with the women too. Men said very clearly there are not safe spaces where men can get together and talk about these issues, and that's so true. I mean, in my 20 years of doing this work, I have seen that over and over, that we as men just don't have the spaces that women in some way create naturally because, socialization issues and so on. And the other is the importance of the family activities, which we know is, a dominant theme among Latinos. What women said is men need help. They need, kind of like the same thing. They need support, Both men who use violence and men who do not use violence, we all need more support than we have. And yes, we are socialized not to ask for that help. That's part of a conundrum that we have, right? Like every man is like, we don't ask for directions, we don't ask for support, we're not vulnerable, and so on. So it's part of what we learned from very young. The violence hurts men too. Exactly what this idea of that Ilya was mentioning, stopping this will benefit and liberate all of us. Women have to engage men at home. That refers to women creating spaces at home where men can take responsibility. A key part, of course, of achieving gender equity, finally, is not only empowering women in public spheres, but also supporting men in private spheres to step up, like this man in that photograph, right? Like a good father doing housework and so on. That we need more family role models, and to invite more men. And this will be a key thing because, as most of you know, the Invito means I invite you. So it started to come from it came from the focus groups, this message about inviting. So when we put it together, that came to the top, inviting men to participate, including the whole family. Men have to take responsibility for leading and for being role models without taking over. And this issue of men needing their own spaces, which is very interesting. So based on all of this, the key message that we got out is this message of inviting. So we created Invito as a campaign, as a phrase, marketing phrase, if you will, with the goal of engaging Latino men in domestic violence prevention. And we went back to the community, to the focus groups and other folks, and tested them. And people really resonate with the message of the Invito. It's like, okay, it's in some way friendly, but it can be firm too, like the one that's there. I invite you to participate. Say no to violence. So it tested very well with our focus groups. So we decided to create a whole campaign and a toolkit based on this idea. So now I will pass the mic, if you will, to Robert, and he will tell you a little bit about the campaign, the Invito campaign, what it looks like, and what you can do with it.
Again, good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Robert DeLeon, and I just want to go ahead and just give you an overview of the Invito campaign, and of course the print material that organizations like yours are going to be able to utilize. So the toolkit in general is a collection of resources and materials for individuals and organizations that want to increase awareness and, of course, are looking for opportunities in engaging Latino men and boys in preventing domestic violence. With this toolkit, you have the opportunity to use a tool or use tools that are both culturally and linguistically specific to Latino men and boys in your communities. And of course, with this particular toolkit, with the Invito toolkit, it is something that you are going to have an opportunity to customize it to where you can add your organization's name and phone number. If you have decided that you want to run a program around engaging Latino men and boys, you're of course given permission or allowed to use the program's name and of course a contact phone number that can be customized. So if you have more than one program coordinator or community health worker working on this type of program, you're able to customize it and use the space on this print material to customize it to your liking, like I said before. And what we want to do with this is provide each and every one of you the opportunity to contact with me, to connect with me, so that we can work through, having this print material readily available for you and your organization. We have flyers that you're going to be able to use. You have the opportunity to use tear-offs. You're able to customize some of the Invito business cards. And also, there's a link that we can create for you so that you're able to use our public service announcement for the Invito. It's available in Spanish with English subtitles. So as you can see with the image on this slide right here, it is bilingual, and it is definitely a great way to engage Latino men and boys in your community that are fluent in English and Spanish or Spanish speaking only. I want to give you a quick background on the Invito, which is something that Juan Carlos kind of led you into, where the campaign was informed by listening sessions conducted with Latino men and women from the St. Paul, Minneapolis metropolitan area, and having these discussions, as Juan Carlos mentioned, there were two questions that were asked to the groups in these sessions, and being able to do so, they were able to come up with this toolkit, which I feel is it's very engaging. It pops. The colors are great. The images that are used on the materials are definitely something that are going to catch people's attention. I know that in using them myself in my community, and that's why I mentioned in the comment that I made earlier, I feel that when you approach men or boys in this case, you're also able to create a conversation around why it's important for men and boys to become involved. And we at times feel that with this particular toolkit and the materials that are available, you're going to have an opportunity to create a conversation for men and boys in your community. So again, being able to use this toolkit that have been developed for organizations that plan to or already work with Latino men and boys, this is just going to be a great addition. So feel free to contact me and communicate with me so that we're able to start the creation of posters, the tear sheets or the tear-offs, the business cards, and other print ad material that, again, we are going to be able to fully customize for you so that you can begin using them. And, we're hoping that you have no problems getting, copies out and disseminated into the community, because this particular media kit contains valuable information and materials that are going to support the work that you do in your communities by engaging Latino men and boys. And this information also can be shared with your local media outlets to help you spread the word in your community. My email address is rdeleon@casaesperanza.org, and I look forward to working with each and every one of you and hope that we can create this material in a timely manner so that you're able to facilitate a discussion in your communities with Latino men and boys on how we can all be a part of the solution and on how we can, hopefully put an end to all violence in our communities.
Thank you so much, Robert. We're so excited to have Robert, who has, in his own right, become a leader, a national leader, actually, for Latino men. So what do we mean by localizing the materials? So what you see there, for instance, is a poster. So there's, as Robert mentioned, there's print, there's posters, there's little cards, and so on. And the part there where you see in green that says Casa, Esperanza, that is blank, actually, and you can put whatever, if you are an organization in the field, you can put your name there and your number, or if you, are a government organization and so on, you can pass this information to your grantees, and we can, part of what Robert's role is to help technically to do that thing. We also have some PSAs that we are very proud of and very happy, but we have had technical problems with this platform when showing videos. I did put in the chat there a couple of messages ago. You can see the PSAs, and I put the link there. And the PSAs, 30-second PSAs, we have both radio and TV. And this man here and the one before are part of the men that came to our community forums. And as Robert mentioned, we asked them two simple questions. One is the same question that I asked you: why is it important to involve men? And the other one is, if you were to finish this phrase, the Invito, this sentence, what would you say? What would you invite men to do? And I wish I could show you the PSA because it's very powerful, but it just goes from one man to another. And for instance, one of them starts with why, right? Because love is stronger than violence. It's a change for the future. Because my father taught me respect. And another one says, and I am an example for my son. And then they go, I invite you to create safe communities. I invite you to be a positive example for your children. I invite you to break the change of violence at home. I invite you to be part of the solution. I invite you to participate, say no to violence. It's very beautiful. I invite you to, no pun intended, to go to the website and look at it. They are in Spanish and, as Robert said, with English inside. So in addition to the campaign, the Invito is more than that. It's a toolkit because we did hear what the men had to say. It's like, yes, I want to get involved, but I don't know how. And we men like tools, and we like toolkits, so this is actually a perfect match. So we created this toolkit, invito.org. Again, you can go visit there. And it's bilingual, as Robert mentioned, and it's, all of our materials are actually bilingual. So I'll just take a few minutes to walk you through the different parts of the toolkit. This is the opening, of course, and then we have the rationale, why, the first tag there, the how, right, and that's more about cultural consideration. Tools and materials, so we are giving actually examples of curricula and different approaches that can be taken mainly at the institutional level. And what to do is more about what men can do, some of the roles that men can play individually, not at an institutional level. A little bit of the answers that you gave me in the chat box. And finally, we have a place for people to share their work. Again, I invite you, if you have any questions at any point, you can write them in the box here as we go along. So I will just briefly take you through the different sections. I mean, we cannot go to great detail, but so that you know what's there. So, we started with why as we started this webinar because it's a key question, right? But in this case, in addition to putting some of the qualitative results that we got from our focus groups and all that, we also included research. And the truth is, and this is not only true about working with men and domestic violence, but in general, the research on Latino communities in the U.S. Is not very abundant. It's rather scarce. So, but we do have some research on prevalence of domestic violence and other kinds of violence, and we put in there factors that intersect with the occurrence of domestic violence. They are not causes, but they are factors. The knowledge and attitudes about domestic violence, the intergenerational transmission of domestic violence, and other kinds of violence that we know is a pattern. Patterns of drug and alcohol use and their overlap with domestic violence, financial factors, as well as cultural factors and gender. So again, I'm not going into a lot of detail there, but those we try to cite as many studies as possible that have come with these topics. And there's a section on prevention, as I mentioned at the beginning of this toolkit. Prevention and primary prevention is the main aim of this toolkit, although we do have also a section on intervention because you cannot leave it totally out. There's not an absolute line that divides prevention and intervention. I mean, some people might disagree with this, but that's my particular opinion. And then, as I mentioned before, the Latino community experiences is the result of our focus groups and so on. And, if you happen to have two screens, you could be looking at the website at the same time. Then we go into the how, and what we decided with this part was that there are actually some resources out there that talk about engaging men in general. There's wonderful programs now that have been around for many years, like Men, like Coaching Boys into Men, like Men Stopping Violence, Make Men Stop Rape. Many resources where you can look at different ways to approach this issue. We were interested in this case to look at particular cultural considerations. We ask ourselves the question, well, what is it different of our engaging Latino men than others? And, the truth is that some things are the same, right? This culture of hegemonic masculinity is actually, can be pretty universal in some ways, in some aspects of it. Some of the socialization that boys have received, like, stuff your feelings, don't cry, don't be vulnerable. Many of these things tend to be universal, although they can manifest in different ways in different cultures. But there are things that are different too, and might overlap with certain cultures, but not with others. So the way that we approach this in the web, in the toolkit, was to tell a story of a man. There's a photograph of a man there. That's why, and basically take him to a scenario of what it's like to create that awareness, like wake up to that awareness that domestic violence and violence against women is a huge problem in this country. How does it touch us personally, and what to do about it, basically. And some of the key factors that we want to emphasize without wanting to stereotype, because it's always very important that one thing is to have considerations, and even sometimes generalizations can be helpful. But when generalizations are taken to an extreme of an absolute, of course, they become a stereotype, and we know that it's not helpful. So some of the things that we know in many Latino communities, and I mean, I think I don't need to state here that the Latino community is not monolithical. It's extraordinarily diverse. It comes from, 30-something different countries in Latin America. And although we do have a language in common and other things, there's great diversity. But some of the things that many communities have is in the centrality of the family, for instance, and this sense that, we what happens to one happens to all, which can be can be a very important tool of engagement for that. The concept of collectivismo, which is similar but going to the next ring, if you will. There's a nuclear family, but for Latinos and for many other cultures, when you say family, you're not just thinking mom and dad or dad and dad or whatever, and children, but you're thinking about grandparents, you're thinking about tios and tias, uncles and aunts, and you're thinking of compadres, which is a very, very important element in many Latin American countries. The role of a compadre, which technically a compadre is, and a comadre, we're talking about men here, a compadre is the godfather of your children. Technically, it comes from there, but there is a broader understanding of compadre. I think I saw Emiliano Diaz DeLeon calling Robert DeLeon my compadre. I don't know if you're formal compadres or not, but there's another relationship of that. I don't know. It's somewhere between a brother and a friend. It's a very important one, and one that I think can be used very effectively in prevention. There's the issue, what we call personalismo and confianza, which again, it's in different cultures, but in Latino culture, that the idea of that you have to create trust before you can do anything else. And trust might mean, visiting many times before bringing up, whatever topic has to be brought up. I remember some years ago reading, actually was a business manual. I found it fascinating for North American businessmen, business people coming to do business in Mexico. And I remember just like looking at it, and there was a part like, when you come to do business, the first thing you do is like you go out and have a meal together, right? And take these people out for dinner. And the first time you do that, you do not talk about business at all. You just do not. You will have to go through that whole thing. And maybe if you're lucky, the second time that you get together, if they come back, then you will bring that up. And it might be a generalization, but it's an interesting one. The issue of respect is a very important value among Latino families. So again, many of us who have worked with many years with men choose that as an entry point, the entry point of respect. There's other entry points. One could be the gender equality entry point, but I can tell you that in general, that is not the easier one to even though that is the goal, there might be other points of entry. Of course, religiosity and spirituality, like it is in many other cultures, can be central in Latino communities. And to be totally honest, I think that is one that has not been fully explored, especially when we're working with both in prevention and intervention with men. There is some work on that, working with survivors and victims and so on. But I think this is one of the places where we can expand. And then there's the issue of particular gender norms and how this male privilege and this someone mentioned oppression of women. How does it look in Latino communities? How is it different from other communities? Not better or worse, but how is it different? So those are some of the things that we explored in the how. And again, we have a lot of interesting questions to explore and et cetera. The toolkit is designed both for, as I said, individuals to go and explore on their own, or also for organizations to adopt some of the tools that are there. And here are the examples of some of the tools. Of course, the Invito campaign is central, and Robert already talked about that one, but that's the leading tool there. Casa, Esperanza also some years ago developed another tool. This one is an audio CD that is called Vive Feliz Hoy, Live Happy Today. It's in Spanish. And it's interesting. It's kind of like a top psychologist kind of guy, talking from a perspective of what we were mentioning before, like that, everybody's life will be better if we change. We are less domineering, if we are less violent, if we take our responsibility for our duties as parents and partners and so on. And we tested it some years ago, and it proved quite effective. Vive Feliz in this idea, you can just happen yourself, right? And this is one of it. So besides the actual tools of Casa Esperanza, we also, of course, wanted to feature the work of other people that have done great work. And actually, Robert, if you're still in the line, maybe you can speak a little bit about Hombres Unidos, since you were involved in this particular project. Can you say a few words about it? I don't know if Robert's still in the line. I know that he had to. Oh, are you there?
Yeah,
okay.
I'm still here. Yeah, I'm trying to get the feud off of mute, but yeah, I mean, Hombres Unidos, I did have an opportunity to use this curriculum, to learn it, and to share it with over 300 men and boys in our communities here in South Texas. It is definitely a great tool for organizations to use. It is all with Spanish. It revolves around a 5-week session that touches base on gender roles, talks about masculinity, and at the end, it brings it all together, ties it in all together very nicely, because it asks for the men that participate in, along with the facilitators, to invite family, to invite loved ones, really, to celebrate this session, this curriculum that they embarked on, to learn more about themselves, to learn more about becoming positive role models in their communities. To me, being able to have gone through it and having been able to share it with others, I always say that this work and of course the work that we did with Hombres Unidos, that it was a life-changing and a life-saving experience. So it is something that is very near to my heart, because it is a great tool, and because of it, I have a lot of men and boys that are still a part of my life throughout the years in doing this work. And like Juan Carlos mentioned earlier, now they're my compadres, so we get to hang out every now and again, and there are respective leaders in their community that continue to do the work with me alongside myself and other men.
Thank you, Robert, for those words. And Emiliano Diaz-León, who is also participating today, he also was one of the people that was involved in developing this. And so to be clear, it is a curriculum. It was assigned originally for migrant workers in Spanish. I think one of the wise things that they did is that they borrowed some materials from Latin America rather than just trying to adapt something that was created here in the U.S. And that was one of the criteria, by the way, for the tools and materials that we have here and that we will continue to add to the toolkit. We just don't want a straight translation of a program that might or might not work with Latino communities, but we are giving preference to programs that were developed for Latinos or that will have a good cultural adaptation. And one of the things that I remember when I first heard about this that intrigued me is, as Robert said, 5 sessions. I think it was 6 sessions originally, right? And it's a short intervention, if you will, but actually it has been evaluated, and the results were quite dramatic. I was quite stunned about the amount of change that was created in those 5 weeks, and probably one of the reasons is that exactly what we were talking about, like it's breaking the isolation for these men and young men that are working here in the U.S. sometimes by themselves, sometimes with their families. So it's something that I really recommend this particular program. We also chose to highlight a program called Historias de Hombres, or in English, Men's Story Project, was started by Dr. Josie Lehrer in San Francisco. She's Chilean American, and it's a workshop basically. It's a very interesting methodology. She goes to a community and she basically screens men that want to participate and tell their stories about masculinity. It's not only about violence, but it's also the other side of the coin, how rigid traditional masculinity hurt men. It's about what it is to be LGBTQ in Latino communities. It's many things. And so they write their own stories, and then if they choose, they perform, in the theater. And it's amazing. It's really so beautiful and so powerful. I have only seen it in video, and there's a version in Spanish and in English, which are totally separate from each other, different men, different stories. And I have not been able to see the whole thing without shedding a few tears. It's very, very powerful. Historias de Hombres. Again, all of the links are in Invito.org, if anything of this is interesting. Then, we couldn't go without recognizing the amazing work of the National Compadres Network. Back to that word, the word of compadres. They have used this concept of compadres, of brother, friends, family members in some way, by choice, that support each other. And this network is mainly in the western part of the country, in California. There's some in Texas, I believe. It's very spiritually based. They do things like temazcales, with sweat lodges and circles of men, and basically they lovingly support each other to change with the basic spiritual idea that we are all connected, and that when one man does something wrong, he's not only hurting one person but the whole community and of course their family. So they use that tool to keep each other accountable, if you will. So very, very interesting and powerful. It's not, as Jerry Teo and Ricardo Carrillo were the founders, wonderful leaders really in this movement. As Jerry says, it's not a program, but it's an approach. So they do have a website. Program H is actually a program developed by Instituto Promundo in Brazil. And wonderful. It's a curriculum mainly for young men. They have a program M for women, 2 H's for hombres, and for mujeres, women. But the program H has been tested in many different countries and contexts, including in Spanish Latin America and here in the United States. So it's like another evidence-based way to work with especially young men. And lastly, we are including coaching Boys into Men here. And as I think Shondell said in the introduction, I worked for Futures Without Violence for 10 years. I was part of the development of this program. And that's not the reason why we are including it, but the reason is that actually, and this is a very exciting thing, we are in the middle right now with the help of Robert and other people to creating a version in Spanish and a cultural adaptation of this program into Spanish and probably into soccer and baseball and the kind of sports that most Latino countries are interested in. So stay tuned. Right now, there's only a version in English, and this is really, for me, it's more than a program too. It's an approach of inviting men. It could be professional coaches or any men to talk to children and to boys in their lives about respecting women and about the fact that violence against women is wrong. So you can go directly to the website, but we're hoping that, I don't know, maybe 5-6 months from now, we will have Entrenando a los hombres para ser niños, our version in Spanish, so that's the word. So that's the tools and materials section. It will continue to grow, so stay tuned on that. We want to include other topics like fatherhood and so on. And then there is a section, and I have not seen any questions so far. If you do have a question, and Sarah, I don't know if I'm missing any, but maybe you can pay attention for me. If you see any questions, bring them to my attention. I'm trying to multitask here. And then the last section is the one that I mentioned that is more maybe about individual men, whether they work in an institution or not, or what to do, how to learn more. And it's really full of interesting resources. Again, trying to be Latino-centered, and the different roles, or some of the roles, I'm sure there's others, that we men can take. And actually, many of these roles were mentioned at the beginning in the chat when I asked you the question. So I can see that this is a pretty sophisticated group. First and foremost, it might not be, it might not be the point of entry, but a key element for the transformation that Robert was talking about, and curricula like Hombres Unidos or Program H, any of these gender transformative programs have to have an aspect of self-reflection, right? Because we as men, we're not socialized to realize what's going on. We carry, by and large, the privilege, and then it's invisible to us. So part of that is to be aware of our own privilege, how it plays out, how it hurts others, and how it hurts ourselves. But it's obviously a process, and it is a process of self-reflection. So we have questions, we have exercises that people can do on their own or as a group. Other roles that men can play, someone, again, in the chat mentioned being an ally to women and girls. And we explored a little bit in that section, what does it mean to be an ally? I mean, it's an interesting word that we throw around sometimes, but it's a complicated one. Again, as men, I think we are often socialized to be rescuers, to be saviors, right? So when we go through the first self-reflection, we're like, oh my God, this is a big problem. So I'm going to rescue all these women, or I'm going to save all these women, and the knight in the white armor appears, and obviously we know from women and from other men that have been doing that work that that's not necessarily what we want, right? That's in some way repeating a little bit of the stereotype. So being an ally is really listening, is really putting ourselves service to what's needed at the time, which sometimes will be leading and sometimes will be following. That's why I have the graphic of the geese there. So as you know, geese, the way that they can go for thousands of miles flying is because they take turns leading, which is the hard role. You have to go against the wind there, right? And then you create the possibility for others to follow more easily. But the geese take turns, you know. So that is, for me, a great metaphor of what an ally is. I see that Chandel does have a question. And I'm sorry. Other curriculum. Okay.
Hi, Juan Carlos. So I can read some of the questions out loud. So there's a question from Felix, which says, I may have missed this, but does the Toolkit have a curriculum if our organization does outreach representations to Latino men and youth?
So, Felix, there's different curricula that are presented here that you can choose from. The Invito itself is not a curriculum per se, but basically it's a series of tools, from the public service announcements to the posters to some questions that can be used for discussions and so on. However, Hombres Unidos and Program H do have more formal curricula. We didn't want to replicate efforts that have been already made. But what we hope is that the tools could be used as a way for you to advance your work. I hope that's helpful.
And then Shondell asks, what are important considerations for others who want to build partnerships with Latino serving organizations to hold community engagement, listening sessions, awareness campaigns, or outreach?
So I think this goes back to the issue of trust, right? And this is a question that often comes: how do you work cross-culturally in these issues? And it definitely can be done. I mean, it's not only Latinos that work with Latinos. It's not only men that work with men. You know, all these things can be crossed, but it is obviously a process of building trust. Even Casa, Esperanza, which is a Latino organization, when they started, and they started by opening a shelter where they offered services in Spanish, they had to go. Back then, I wasn't there, but they had to go through quite a process of really examining what is it that the community wants. Because I think, like many of us, started with our own assumptions of what the community wants. So you mentioned listening sessions. That's for us. That's a key tool. We actually have a whole manual called Cuesta Unida and how our whole MO is based on this feedback loop with community, always asking and always going back and confirming and so on. So I think even if you start very small, whether it's cross-cultural or not, it's just sitting down and really listening, and this is the hard part. Then, if you're committed to it, you need to follow what they are saying, you know, as long as you don't think it's harming anyone else, you know. And, you know, this could be the subject of another webinar, but domestic violence and other kinds of violence might not be the primary concern of the community, even if they experience it in high numbers. There's other issues, you know this very well, of course, and there's other issues that intersect. So, and, you know, sometimes as agencies, we're just focused on one thing. So we have to have the flexibility to be open to other supports. And this is a little off topic here, but very quickly I'll tell you that as a result of those listening sessions that Casa Esperanza does every 3 or 4 years, new ones, because we don't assume that what we heard 3 or 4 years ago, it still holds true right now. But one of the things that ended up happening was that women and men in the community in St. Paul said, yes, domestic violence is a problem, yes, we need help with it. But we also need help on other things. And one of them is that we need someone to help us. We need access to the internet. We need access to translation. We need support in terms of information. And what Casa ended up doing was opening some centros de information centers in the markets, which are Mexican, Latin American markets in St. Paul and Minneapolis. And these centers had nothing to do with domestic violence except that there was literature there about it. They had a couple of computer terminals with internet, and they had volunteers that were bilingual, and people came to translate documents and to ask, where can I buy a truck, and, you know, other things. So I like sharing that story because I think it kind of felt like that's how you start building, trust with the community. I will go through this slide there, and then I see that there's at least one more question. But so other things that we can do, someone mentioned that before, men can influence other men. We still have that privilege that our voices are heard more than the voices of women. Actually, I told my compadre Emiliano that I was going to put his picture there. That's Emiliano DeLeon, and I put him because he's like Robert, one of the great emerging leaders among Latino men. Great example. Another one is to be a positive bystander. Someone mentioned We need to know what to do in a crisis. That's an interesting way to put it. If we see this happening, whether it's a crisis or not, whether it's after the fact, then what can we do? And a lot has actually in the mainstream movement has been developed about being a positive bystander. I think in Spanish we're just starting to even figure out how to say that. There's not a good word for positive bystander. It's more like a witness or an active witness. But this is an example of an organization in Philadelphia that it uses this approach. It says Juan and his brothers told their cousins in the family, right, that he's being abusive and he needs to get help. And the campaign is called Men Can, Los Hombres Sí Poden. Disclosing our own history, we know that there's literally millions of men walking around who have been victims, especially of childhood sexual abuse, and because of social norms, we are not encouraged, to say the least, to share that. But there's people like Victor Rivas here, who is an actor that you might know, who has been very courageous, and other people to talk about their own story, not only as direct survivors, but growing up in a family where there was violence. And of course, becoming a role model for boys. Finally, many of us think that this is the way that we are really going to solve this problem, is by breaking the intergenerational cycle of violence, which we talk about a lot, and creating the intergenerational cycle of love, which we don't talk about a lot, but there is such thing. As much as we have negative cycles, we have positive cycles. And sometimes for men to realize that they have the power to break generations of abuse and convert it in generations of love going ahead can be a very, very powerful tool. And certainly supporting women and girls' organization, from anything from volunteering to, of course, financial support. This is actually the wonderful staff of the shelter at Casa, Esperanza, always appreciative of such support. So there was another question, right, Sarah?
I have two more questions right now. One of them is, how has the NLN seen others use Invito?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
It is, how has the NLN seen others use Invito?
Very good question. Right now, I knew Robert from before, but he was one of the pioneers, as well as Emiliano DeLeon, to let us use in the community. Maybe Robert, if you're still there, you're a great example of that, how it was used in a particular community. We don't have a lot of time, but maybe a couple of minutes.
Yeah, I can definitely share. So that's how I got involved with Invito. Was I had started my own nonprofit here in South Texas called Bro Models. That's BRO, Bro Models. Instead of role models, it's Bro Models. But I remember Juan Carlos reached out to me and let me know that Invito had been released, and he wanted to go ahead and pilot that with us. And we were able to use all of the resources and materials that I introduced to you, and of course that have been mentioned throughout the webinar. We were able to add the organization's name. We were able to add our phone number. We were able to add our logo towards the end of the PSA that's available on the YouTube video. It's been welcomed here in our communities. A lot of people know of the organization through the print material and ads that we use that were provided by Invito. Again, great people are receptive to it. It's sending out a very positive message to men and boys, because it's asking them to be a part of this movement, to be a part of the solution. And the video also talks about healthy relationships, healthy masculinity, being positive role models, and how men and boys can become involved. If you ask me, it is very successful, and it's welcomed in our community here in South Texas. But I would imagine that it would be welcomed in any community throughout the country.
Thank you, Robert. And so far it has been used in New Mexico, in California, I believe, in Georgia, and with the help of Robert, we're hoping that there will be that it can be replicated in other places. It's relatively simple, and again, the other programs like Robert's, they have used it as an engagement tool to bring people in, really following that spirit of inviting someone. So there was a question about measure success in short-term programs. I don't think I have time to get into that with a lot of detail. As you probably know, measuring change can be difficult because change of behavior, change of attitudes, right, and change of beliefs. I believe that in some of these programs like Program H and Hombres Unidos, as well as Coaching Boys into Men, this all are haphazard of evidence-based, and in what I know of these programs, they have not only helped change the beliefs and attitudes of some of these men, but in some cases, when there was access to their partners, like during graduations or something like that, there was clear evidence that at least some behaviors had changed too. And again, remember that this is primary prevention. These are not programs to stop battering. That's a whole other webinar that we are not going to do today. So thank you. And someone was asking about how the Toolkit documents. Just go to invito.org, and you can get everything. You can download them for free, or as you can see there, Robert DeLeon, his email address is right there. You can contact him, and he can assist you, and my email address is there too. So we have come to the end of our time, amazingly, and I'm going to send it back to you, Shondell.
Thank you, Juan Carlos and Robert. We really appreciate you not only talking through the process of how Te Invito came to be, but giving us a preview of the tools and resources that exist on the online toolkit. What we will do in follow-up, this webinar is being recorded. We will send you all the link to the webinar recording when it is available in about a week, along with the links to the toolkit, so that you all may be able to forward that to others to raise awareness. Robert has also graciously offered to be of support to answer any questions. His email address is there on the last slide, as well as Juan Carlos's. I invite you to not only visit the Te Invito website, but to visit the National Latino Network's website. There are a whole host of toolkits and resources on engaging youth and looking at language access planning, and talking about the prevalence of domestic violence among the Latino community, as well as highlighting best practices, tools, and resources. So thank you all very, very much for joining us today. I want to thank our co-host again from the Office of Women's Health and the Maternal and Child Health Bureau. We will be following up with links, and please be sure to join in to the other webinars we're hosting this week and next week. You can find that information on the NRCDV's website. I will send you all that link along with our webinar calendar. So thank you all very much for joining us this afternoon. This concludes our webinar today.
This concludes today's call. Participants may disconnect at this time.